Welcome to today's edition of the Longevity Lab. Today's guest is Dr. Geeta Dharmatti. She's a registered dietitian and a clinical nutritionist. Very, very well accomplished. And we'll get into Geeta's background uh, soon after. Let me just quickly do a couple of housekeeping things. Um, as always, please stay on mute so that the line is clear for everyone to hear. And as and when you have questions, please keep typing them away in the chat box and we'll get to as many of them by the end. Um, Many of you are already part of the community and that's why you're here. But if you aren't and you want to sign up, it's very easy. I'll provide that to you on the next slide. Here are all the things that community members get access to. Uh, just scan the QR code and you should be able to get added to the WhatsApp community. And from there on, it's pretty easy. Uh, I want to talk about two quick new community features we have added. One is Moderator Kai. This is an account that's been added to the group. And the idea is the following. A moderator Kai will ensure that because we are so focused on making on credibility and ensuring that all the information that you see in the community is rooted in real science. It's not, some fringe theories. We want to ensure that if we find anything on the community that's an opinion rather than a fact, we will jump in to clear that. And so most of the time, Moderator Kai will stay in the background, will let the community have its conversations. If ever we believe that there is something that's off, Moderator Kai will step in. The other way Moderator Kai will step in is if you decide you want to get, you want to verify some claim that's been made or that you've heard something that you're not sure whether it's true or not, you can just mention at Moderator Kai in your WhatsApp message. And that's the next time that Kai will step in to answer that. So we want to stick to our fundamental value system of ensuring that everything that is discussed is rooted in science. Anything that you have doubts about, that you want to get clarification on, you just type at Moderator Kai and we'll step in. I want to provide a little bit more detail. There is a well-known approach called the EBM, evidence-based medicine science, and what this does is there is a very high standard of something being clinically true, unless it shows up in enough clinical journals of repute. We will not talk about anything that does not meet these standards of EBM, sorte, I squared less than 25%. It's just a fancy way of saying it's very, very clinically accurate research. And like I said, if you ever wanted to want us to step in, just type in at Moderator Kai in your message, or if you want to verify some other message that somebody's typed, you can reply to that and say, add Moderator Kai, can you please help verify? All right. The second thing I want to announce is many of you have joined the community later in the last week or 2 weeks, but we have had some very interesting talks even earlier. And so what we are going to be doing is in the announcements group, you will see a message pinned to the top, and that message will have all past talks. There'll be two playlists. One playlist will be a list of all the talks, long form talks that have happened. And the second playlist will be snippets from those longer talks. So if you don't have the time and you just want to go through a few concepts that were discussed in these longer talks, that's the second playlist. And so both of these playlists will be pinned to the top of the announcements group. So go there and you can catch up on old talks. All right. So that's the two new community features for this week. And I just want to also announce that next week's guest is going to be Dr. Pranjali Gadge. She's a very, very well-known breast oncosurgeon and worked in the US and trained in the US at the Mayo Clinic and so on. And she'll be our guest for next week. So that's a teaser for mark your calendars for next week. All right. With that, let's move to the a friend and a guest that I think is going to be quite exciting for everyone to hear from, and that's Dr. Geeta Dharmatti. I'm now going to read through Geeta's accomplishments. I just put a very small version of that over here. But Geeta has been working with us. We have had a chance to really get to know Geeta and the amazing work she's been doing over the years in the area of uh, gut health, nutrigenomics, but really at the highest level, she is sort of the go-to person for almost anybody, definitely in Pune and frankly outside Pune as well. People sort of get to her from all over the country. She's a professor at multiple schools as well, multiple nutrition institutes as well. So both practical experience, academic knowledge, and the thing that I admire the most about Geeta is the fact that she's got such an open mind and all the time learning more and wanting to keep up with the times. So, with that as a quick introduction, welcome Geeta. Geeta, you there? Your thing seems to have frozen. I think we just seem to have lost Geeta's connection. We'll just give her a minute. Otherwise, we will. Sneha, can you just try contacting her?
I'm trying to call her. Just one second.
Yeah. Worst case is get her on the phone, even if she can't join on the.
Ma'am is joining in a minute. There's some internet issue that she's in. She's just rejoining in a minute.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks. But is there any question that without even us starting the topic, is there anything that you've seen on the moderator Kai or the playlist? Is that something that you find helpful? Would that be something you would be able to use?
Hello.
Yeah, Geeta.
Yeah, sorry, there's some technical issue.
Yeah, no problem. So I just gave the background on you, Geeta, and
Sure.
I wanted to sort of just welcome you and we can get started. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Nikhil. It's wonderful to be here with this forum, and I see the network growing with every session, and the interest in these sessions is really wonderful. And I think kudos to you to keep this moderation so well and so narrative. I think the interest is something which people are getting bonded to. So thank you very much for inviting, and let's get started with today's topic.
Perfect. All right. So, Geeta, let's start by explaining to our audience what exactly the Mediterranean diet is. I mean, a lot of people have heard it. It's comes in the news every now and then. But maybe that might be a good starting point just to explain what it is about.
True. I have given a presentation, a slide of what a Mediterranean diet looks like, a pyramid. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So Mediterranean, as the name suggests, we definitely know it is an area in the Europe where you have Greece, southern Spain, Italy, all those areas of Europe which generally follow this diet. That's a Mediterranean area which follows the diet. Actually, how different is it from what we're eating and why we are looking at it Indianized version? If you can see in this pyramid, because food pyramid is generally taken it in a manner where the bottom line is more of socialize, sit together and eat. I think that's what you promote in your Kai messages and all, habit forming, more of discipline, habit forming. So if you can see the bottom line, it's more of a socialization. So putting that good hormones together. Then the next is all unprocessed food, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, seeds, nuts, not processed at all, cooked at home, unprocessed food. And the next on the top you see is your lean meat and pulses, the proteins. There's no dairy here. And then you see sugars and fats. So I think Mediterranean diet talks about more of plant-based food. And that is why I think this Mediterranean diet can be very easily converted to what we are eating in India. That's why my interest always goes as in a country or a cultural or ethical eating pattern like us, where we don't eat non-veg very regularly. It comes as holiday or it comes as somewhere in between. Or even if you eat non-veg, if you realize how to eat. But the basic idea is more of plant-based diet, of very well unprocessed and not much cooked and not much processed food. So this is how I think Mediterranean diet promotes. It always says 50% of your plate has to be vegetables, 25% has to be carbohydrates, and 25 proteins. So it's a very typical eating, healthy eating plate, which is being promoted by all countries. USDA also promotes it. Indian Council of Medical Research also promotes it. It always says half of your plate, if you can look on this plate, half of your plate is vegetables and fruits. But in that half, it is the 75% of that half is vegetables and 25% is fruits. So ICMR says 800 grams of vegetables per day for a healthy adult and 200 grams of fruit per day for a healthy adult. And then you start looking at other half, which takes up your carbohydrates and proteins. So as we go ahead, I can always put this into an Indian version, but this is how a typical Mediterranean diet is. And now you can also make out that this is what our Indian people generally eat, because we have a lot of variety, cultural preferences. We are not into a single meal. We don't eat sandwiches or Frankies. We are more into roti, sabji, dal, chawal. So there's a lot of variety in the meal. So that's how we thought of putting this Mediterranean diet into an Indian aspect.
Yeah. And yeah, before we even get into the Indian aspect of it, the fact that the Mediterranean diet is so popular, one of the reasons is because of its impact on health markers.
Perfect.
Generally, people who follow the Mediterranean diet seem to have very, very good, cholesterol levels, blood sugar levels, inflammation levels. Can you talk a little bit about the fact that this has been studied quite extensively, right?
Yes, very much. Why Mediterranean diet is more promoted is because it's extensively studied. 2, 3 studies I'll help you understand, or two we can say. The PREDIMED study has started in 23. It was done mostly in European countries, in Spain. It's a Spanish study. PREDIMED is a short form where it says Prevention con Dieta Mediterránea. So it's a Spanish way of looking at it, but it's more about prevention. What they've done is they've picked up age group 55 to 75 age group. That is more of adults, senior adults. They picked up 3 health challenges with any 3 risk factors: smoking, alcohol, obesity, diabetes. So we call this all as lifestyle challenges. So any 3 they picked up, cholesterol. So 55 to 80, male or female, if you have any 3 risk factors, you're picked up there. They've made it into 3 groups. One group, they gave this Mediterranean diet, what we just spoke of, but they added extra olive oil in that because olive oil is much taken there, extra virgin olive oil. In one group, they've added a lot of nuts. And in one group, they just said eat low-fat meal, generally what we try to promote for a cardiovascular group. So in these 3 groups, and they did a study for 8,000 people. And in this Mediterranean, they made variations and they started giving them this kind of a diet. And what they observed is in both the groups, the virgin olive oil group and the nuts group with Mediterranean, they had better vascular, the reversal of heart disease. The blockages, the cholesterol, other areas was much, much better. This study was from 2003 to 2011. So it's a longer duration study and it was published in 2013. So look at that 2 decades of where we are trying to still understand this Mediterranean diet. After that, so many diets are coming in. But the proven benefit of this Mediterranean diet is very high in vascular health, anti-inflammation, gut flora. You also have this impacting in your neurology or in your mind health. So PREDIMED is one study, and there are many other studies with a lot of data telling us that more than 1,000 people were studied with 1 decade of study, and there were n number of outcomes which was proved to be beneficial through this Mediterranean diet. And now, as we go ahead, Indian Mediterranean diet is started looking at the cure study, which was done by Dr. Mohan in Chennai, where he also studied around 1,200, 1,500 people in Chennai, in urban Chennai. And he said that he found this, especially this is done mostly in adult population 50 plus, where they found it anti-inflammatory, gut microbiome, immunity, cholesterol, anti-aging too, what they found out in this. So I think there's a lot of support for us to believe that, yes, Mediterranean diet is here to stay. And what I found it is similar to what we are eating, because I'm sure the audience here would like to know, now, how do I change my diet into Mediterranean diet? I mean, how different am I eating? So we will try to work on that. Yeah.
Sorry, Geeta, I was just going to say, I just want to, before we jump into this, because I know a lot of people are very excited about hearing the Indian adaptation of the
Correct.
Mediterranean diet.
Correct.
But one comment I wanted to make just for everyone on this call is that, there are all these diets. There is the keto diet. There is the low carb diet. There are lots of these diets, but I differentiate them from a Mediterranean diet. This is not one more diet. It actually is a way of living that has been proven in the long term to be sustainable. To me, a diet, at least the way I look at it is anything that you can do for a short time is a fad. Okay. Maybe you're trying to address a very specific issue. Okay. But most people cannot stick to some of these diets, like a keto diet, for too long. It's just not very practical. Whereas one can be on the Mediterranean diet for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
And not only can they stick to it, but they benefit dramatically from it. And Indian diets, and I'm sure, Geeta, you want to talk about this, what are some of those weaknesses of the Indian diet? There are a lot of strengths in the Indian diet, but it's not a surprise that India is the heart disease and the diabetes capital of the world. So while there are strengths, there are certain weaknesses. And I think what you're really going to be talking about is adaptation of the Indian diet so you get the best of both worlds, right?
Very true. So how it all started, Nikhil, is the fat. The culprit is the fat. We all started blaming fat one fine decade in 1990s and 2000, if you know that. We said that fat is bad. People have stopped using ghee on the pulkas and then oil in tadkas. It became a villain in our kitchen. And then specifically we said we eat oil-free food, we eat this and that. Gradually in these 2 decades, you have noted, and we have started promoting fat as a healthy fat. We felt fat is important. 30% of your calories should come from fat. And this changed the perspective from the Mediterranean diet. Because fat is essential for me, but the problem when you get a lot of vascular challenges, inflammation, mind, body, gut, everything is because of you have added a lot of omega-6 in your fat. How does this omega-6 come in the diet? When you expose the oil to a higher temperature. And that's what went wrong with our diets in these 2 decades. We started eating a lot of street foods, food which is being exposed to a higher temperature. We started looking at baking or microwaving, tandoori, grilling, these aspects of food as a very healthy way because it is oil-free. But if you're exposing any food, any fat to a high temperature, to an open environment, it oxidizes very easily. And that is the culprit because it increases your omega-6. And when omega-6 increases in your diet, omega-3 goes down. Because omega-3 is essential. These 2 are essential fatty acids. Omega-6 and omega-3 are essential. Your body needs it. You have to take it from the food. And if you are going in imbalance of it, the US dietary pattern says the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is 10. Indian also is not behind. We are also 10 to 15. What is expected? 2:1. For every 2 omega-6, we need 1 omega-3. But we are at 10 and almost 1. Either reduce your omega-6 or increase your omega-3. Either way, we need to work on that. So this Mediterranean diet promoted a lot of nuts, 30 grams, 40 grams of nuts. So almond, walnuts. So all those nuts were promoted in it, which I think we do not eat it much. I mean, we didn't realize it that nuts are so significant contributor of good fats. What we looked at is cooking oil. We were all interested in which oil, how much oil, refined oil, filtered oil. But what was important in this is the unprocessing of food. or the cooking techniques which were used while you make the food did not allow the fat to get oxidized to a high temperature. And then that changed the way we started looking at it. And this Indianized way is to tell people that we can modify our diet into Mediterranean diet. If you can manage your fats in your diet very well, start eating fats which are healthy. So I think the promotion of fat as a healthy fat is more important in this context of Mediterranean diet, because other things we all know, we need to increase vegetables, we need to eat fruits. It's not a new news for us. But what is going to be new here is to understand the healthy fat aspects. And if you actually pick up that fat and balance your omega-6, omega-3, I think your heart is happy, your inflammations are low, and your mind is also happy.
So, Geeta, I want to learn again. You made a couple of very, very important points that I want to make sure everyone on the call sort of appreciate. And I want to sort of break it down into the following things. Number one, like Geeta said, fats were blamed for a lot until they were able to differentiate between good fat and bad fat. And Geeta used the term good fats, healthy fats, right? Typically unsaturated, polyunsaturated, those fats are considered good. Saturated is not bad, but you can't have too much of it. And the typical ratio of unsaturated to saturated is supposed to be 80-20, right? About that, 90-10, 80-20, in that range. Okay. So fats are not bad. Just like carbs are not bad. Carbs are bad if you have too much of it, if you have too many of the simple carbs. Similarly, with fats are not bad. You have to get that right ratio of unsaturated to saturated. So that's one important concept. The second important concept that Geeta made was about this whole omega-3, omega-6. Okay. One of the very interesting things that you will see is that omega-3 has been shown to be a very good correlator, and some are arguing causation of longevity. Right. So there is a metric called the omega-3 index. Okay, it's something that some advanced blood tests provide. Okay, omega-3 index in general in India is pretty low. Most of us have relatively low omega-3 index because most of us don't eat too much seafood. Walnuts are a good source, but again, how many of us are eating a lot of walnuts? So for that reason, omega-3 index in Indians is relatively low. In the Japanese, on the other hand, is very high. Okay, their omega, so Indians are about 4, 3, 4. In the US, it's about 5, 6. In Japan, it's 10, 12. And if you now compare the health span, the lifespans, there is almost like a 8 to 9 year difference in lifespan between the Japanese and the Americans. Okay, and so that's a worthwhile thing to keep in mind, that omega-3 is important, unsaturated fats are important. And the third point that Geeta made is the temperature of the oils, right? If you take any oil and start heating it up to very high temperatures, it causes a lot of issues. So fat was blamed in many ways unfairly. It was all the other aspects that mattered.
Perfect. So converting that Mediterranean into Indian perspective is very easy if you can make out. I need to put adequate vegetables in my diet. So it's not just eating a carb like Indian generally try to, if I can convert that into a slang, Indian chapati and sabji. So I said, how much sabji do you eat? I eat chapati, and for that I eat sabji. So I am trying to tell you that you need to now upgrade that 2 bowls of vegetables and 1 roti. So carb has to be 1, vegetables have to be 2, proteins have to be 2. So I think this is how we will convert that into daily food also. But this is how I think is what we are looking at. 2 servings of vegetables, 2 servings of proteins, and 1 serving of carb. And this pattern of food gives you omega-3 automatically, because omega-3, MUFA, that is omega-9. MUFA is monounsaturated fatty acid, which is otherwise called as omega-9. This is the healthy way of looking at another good fat in your diet. Avocado is very good source of MUFA. Flaxseed is good source of omega-3. So if you eat adequate vegetables, lentils, lean meat, you automatically get good amount of omega-3 in your diet, and add few nuts, which we will discuss here after, and how to upgrade your diet with omega-3. So if this is the way you're eating, you don't really have to be bothered about looking at if I'm eating well or not. But the plate first has to be fixed, and then we can top it up with other areas of fat and polyphenols and antioxidants. That comes later on.
Yeah. And if anybody is feeling like, what, there's so much information, what we will do after the call is we will we'll send the plate method out, and we'll also provide practical foods that if you have them in your diet, you are effectively following the Mediterranean diet, right? So while we talk about the background and the details, if you want to simplify it in your mind of, okay, net, what do I need to do? We'll publish a list of foods that if you have in your diet, you're off to a great start. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Next question, Geeta, is there is a reasonable amount of like meat and fish in the Mediterranean diet, right? Is a plant-based if somebody is purely vegetarian, how possible is that to still follow the Mediterranean diet in the Indian version?
Perfect. So as we said, 1/4 part should be proteins. Now, what's important in protein, Nikhil, is the quality of protein more than quantity of protein. Because protein are subject to availability. Not all I eat gets absorbed. So that is why Indian diet is mostly a combination-based diet. I mean, interestingly, idli comes with sambar. Right? Idli chutney we are eating, but it is important that you look at sambar as an equal partner in your idli. So I always say one idli is equal plus one bowl of sambar. You can't eat 2 idlis and chutney. That's not a good meal. So if you're looking at combination of meals which we have, paratha with curd, thalapit with curd. So in an Indian scenario, if you start looking at a vegetarian food, they come in combinations. Now, what is important is if I'm not having lean meat or dairy to a higher, because dairy is also saturated fat, I'm allowed to have dairy only 300 ml per day, not more than that, because it equally contributes to my bad fat. As you just said, saturated fat is good, but I don't need a very high amount of saturated fat. Then how do I get my proteins? So I always say that 1/4 protein has to be 1 katori dal and 1 katori curd in your meals, right? Or if it is sprout, it can be 1 katori sprout and 1 katori curd. You don't want to have a dairy, you can double your proteins. But lentils have to come in combination with your grains and with your vegetables. So if you combine a meal, then your bioavailability of protein becomes very, very high. Because if you know a cereal pulse combination, you know why khichdi is called a national dish of India, moong dal khichdi, because it's a perfect combination of rice, dal, and vegetables. It's a very go-to meal for all of us. But now what's important, if I have to put this khichdi into a Mediterranean concept, then now convert this khichdi into a Mediterranean diet, I would say 1 serving of vegetable, like 1 katori of vegetable, 1 katori of dal, and half katori of rice. So this should be my with a oil as a seasoning which we use. So this is how I think balancing the combination will give you good quality of protein, because my amino acid in protein in lentil is lysine, and my amino acid in cereal is methionine, which is lacking in either way. So if I combine rice and dal together, I get the best quality protein. So I think this is how it makes sense when you look into a vegetarian concept.
Geeta, I want to sort of add 2 comments to what you just said.
Sure.
One is, the reason meat is considered a good source of protein is because they have all the amino acids that Geeta spoke about. Many of the vegetables don't always have that. But if you combine them, you still get the entire combination. And so what Geeta just explained is a very good way of combining things that are complementary to each other so that they give you the entire protein profile that one needs. So that's one comment. And the other one I wanted to make is, I, as you know, write about my experiments. And one of the most fascinating experiments that I have run recently, in fact, is because I'm constantly trying to figure out what foods help me sleep better at night. What should my last meal be? And I actually found that my best sleep comes after having a dinner where the dinner has khichdi, which is fascinating but not surprising given what you said. And what I do to sort of make it a little bit more protein heavy is I throw in nuts and some non-fat Greek yogurt. And so between the khichdi the nuts, and the non-fat Greek yogurt, I'm getting I mean, the khichdi
Best.
is already well balanced, but now this also adds the protein and the healthy fats. And so this is sort of effectively a Mediterranean version of the Indian khichdi.
Perfect. So suppose many people feel that if the lentils don't suit me, how do I balance my meal? Suppose there's no dal, how do I get my protein? So you mentioned it right. Nuts can be added in your diet, but remember, whole pulses you won't be, because they have something called, they're all difficult to digest. So they have something called as lectins, which many a times give you allergies, digestion issues, and all. But if you dilute the protein, like instead of having the thick dal, if you have a thin dal, it suits you better. You can have tempered buttermilk, you can have curd if you feel that you're not able to digest, or otherwise if there is no protein, I will ask you to have protein supplement which is easy to digest. End of the day, we have to balance the nutrition, and if the food is not coming into picture, supplements come for rescue. So this is how we start looking at the balancing, but protein has to be there, fiber has to be there, the carbs has to be there.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's perfectly put. And so, one question, I know in India, the traditional thalis are always very much in demand. Um, what would you say about the makeup of a traditional thali? Because it's been there for a while. I've always viewed it as, oh, that's a pretty good meal. But I know this is not a Mediterranean diet question, but it is still, I'm trying to compare and contrast with the other sort of thing that people eat a lot is the thali. What is your sort of take on the pros and cons of the thali?
True. Thali generally we eat when we go out. So if you know that when we go out and eat, you're ushered with first a drink. It's either a buttermilk or it's a soul curry or it's some kind of, at least water. First you drink. Then you are not immediately given the carbs, roti and the chawal. They'll give you the left side first. So the left side is mostly a vegetable, a fried item, a pickle or something like that. And then they give you the carbs. But there's a lot of variety in thali. I mean, thali is, especially a Gujarati or a Maharashtrian thali, if you eat, there's a lot to eat in the thali. There's so much of variety, and the sweet dish comes at the end. So for me here, appetite plays a very important role. I mean, if I have a normal appetite, if I start from beverage, then eat some side dishes of protein, and then I move to chapatis and rice, I end up eating less carbohydrates. Definitely thalis in India are looked at as a very high glycemic load meal. Because if I have to eat a thali, I have to count my carbs in the thali. There'll be roti, there will be sweet dish, there'll be rice, there will be a lot of carbs in the meal. So I have to mindfully look at thali as controlled glycemic load so that I don't spike up my sugar. So I will put a technique to eat that thali whenever I go to eat the thali so that my appetite is trained. I end up eating, because glycemic load is a combination of fiber, fat, proteins, and carb. So it is, especially at home, we generally have roti sabji. But when we eat thali, we have so much of variety, and we just spoke about combination which works better. So it's important that in my thali, I count my carbohydrates. So I will do the justice to other items of there's a dhokla or there is a papad and all that. Then I'll move to roti, and if I want to eat sweet dish, I will minus roti and eat little rice. So I will balance the carbs. That becomes a very interesting way of eating thali. Otherwise, your thali, like in season of mangoes, the amras thali, it shoots your glycemic load. That's why adding fat to this thali reduces your glycemic load. That's why at least in Pune, we belong to, you have a culture of adding ghee to modak, to amras, so that it reduces your glycemic load. The sugar doesn't spike after you eat the food. This is how it is. Appetite plays a great role.
Right, right. Geeta, can you talk a little bit about the Indian oils and spices, what we typically use in our cooking? How do they fit into the Mediterranean diet? Because I don't think the Mediterranean diet typically has the plethora of spices and stuff that we have in India. True. What is the role there?
Sure each one of the audience here is very curious to know, because end of the day, we go confused which oil to use, how much oil to use. All that is very, very important. So let's talk about oils first, Nikhil, and then we move on to the spices as we take it ahead. So as we said, the fat is very integral part of the diet. Hello?
Yeah, Geeta, we can hear you.
Yeah. So as I said, fat is 30% of my calories. But remember, in that 30%, I have two types of fat, invisible fat and visible fat. My food has its own fat. You know, rice bran also gives me oil, mustard gives me oil. So my food has its own fat. Every food has a fat. That's what we discussed. The nuts, the rice, the dal, and everything has its own fat. So that fat is 15%. It's a good fat. And this is what we are looking at in my Mediterranean diet. I want to eat food which has its own fat. Now, what we are discussing now is only the 15 grams or 50% of the oil, which is visible fat. So invisible fat separate and visible fat separate. So invisible fat, I'm saying eat food, half plate vegetables, carbs, proteins, and add 30 grams of nuts and 15 grams of seeds every day. 30 grams of nuts. Nuts are all almond, walnut, groundnut, but 30 grams and 15 grams of seeds. So this is a part of invisible fat, which is MUFA, which is omega-3, which is the best part. Now we move to the oil part, which is unsaturated. Fats which are liquid at room temperature is unsaturated. Very simple to understand. Fats which is a solid at room temperature like ghee, coconut oil, palm oil, they're all solid at room temperature. They are saturated fat. So unsaturated fat, the major challenge is they get very easily rancid. They get very easily oxidized. So step one, always buy oil in pouches. Buy 1 liter oil. Don't buy a tin of oil. Because more you expose the oil, more trans fat, more rancidity it gives you. So pouches, you buy the oil and store it in dark, cool place so that you're not damaging the unsaturated nature of oil. So step one, cold pressed, filtered or refined. If you know the source of oil in cold pressed and you are able to use it within a stipulated time, then buy cold pressed. Cold press as best suited as salad oils, not more for cooking or frying, because they have a lot of impurities and you have to finish them at the earliest immediately when you buy. Otherwise, they'll do more damage than good to you. Next is filtered oil. One step better, but again, the shelf life is important. Finish it within a 2-3 weeks time. Don't go beyond it, because again, the problem is the rancidity. So I personally feel when we are counting the oil, when we know that excess oil is not good, refined is a better way of using that oil. If you're going to store it for more than 1 or 2 months, which we generally do as a grocery, we can't finish it so early. So refined is a better way of looking at it. Of course, it has some chemicals, but at the end of the day, you're using it less. Having that chemical is more of vitamin E. They add all antioxidants to it to increase the shelf life. So it doesn't do a lot of damage to you. What does damage is if you use cold press oil, buy it and store it for 1 or 2 months and keep using it, that's more dangerous. That's about these 3 oils. Then we come to understand which is the best oil. According to the research, olive oil is the best oil. But olive oil of various types. You have virgin olive oil, you have pomace oil. Olive is a fruit. So oil is extracted from the seed. But olive oil is the best oil for cooking. If you use olive oil, people stay and who can afford is good. But Indian cooking, mustard oil is at par with olive oil. Mustard or rapeseed. Rapeseed is also called canola oil. So if you can manage canola, mustard, olive, excellent. No need of changing the oils. And small amount of saturated fat, because it has best combination of MUFA, PUFA and saturated fat. So it's the best oil. But again, not these oils suit all of us. So I don't like the taste of mustard and all. Then what I do, I pick up an oil which has a very good MUFA. So rice bran, soya bean, right? Or groundnut. And I keep rotating the oil. I won't blend the oils. I'll keep rotating the oils. And use small amount of saturated fat, 1 or 2 teaspoons of ghee in a day. So this is how I can get the best, because every fat, every oil has its own USP. So I have to look at the bigger picture and look and say, okay, I need this fat, and this fat, but I will use it in rotation. So I have a better way of having all the balanced way of giving my fatty acids to my body. So this is, I think, in a nutshell, about Indian cooking oils, which used to be happen. Another small point here, frying of oils. If you want to fry, smoking point is very important. Best oil for frying is sunflower or karadai, safflower oil, because they have higher smoking point compared to other oils. But saturated fat, frying is the best because they don't get oxidized at all. Like frying in ghee, if you want to really fry, frying is not good. But at the end of the day, we want to fry. Frying in ghee coconut oil is any day better than frying in unsaturated fat, because the fat is more stable in your saturated way, like in ghee or your coconut oil. But if you want to fry in unsaturated fat, sunflower or safflower, reusing the frying oil is very toxic. It is more dangerous. It is more atherogenic. It is more cancerous. So I think that point we should all keep in mind, that if you fry unsaturated fat, do not reuse it at all. So there's a lot of information about oil. Over to you.
Yeah, no, just to summarize, because there's a lot of information there, is avoid fried food. But if you're going to have fried food, fry it in saturated fat type of oil. When, if possible, if you, for any reason, end up using unsaturated, do not use it more than once.
Perfect.
For most of your foods, use olive oil,
mustard
oil, and canola. Right. These are three, and cycle through them. Right?
No, when you use these three oils, you need not cycle.
Okay.
They have a very good blend: canola, olive, and mustard.
You could just use one of them for a long time and there's no problem. Got it. Great.
So we come to
now
spices.
Let's talk about spices.
Yep. So Indians, we are culinary experts in spices, and the food cannot be complete without spices. We connect the food with spices: taste, happiness, comfort, satisfaction, all that comes through spices. And every person has a different connect with the spices. Somebody needs a very spicy food, and how do you start looking at this food? So the masala box in our kitchen, and all ladies will definitely love hearing this. The masala box in the kitchen, we have mustard seeds, we have jeera, cumin seeds, we have asafoetida, we have haldi. All that ingredients, when we add in the tempering, that is the best way of adding antioxidants, polyphenols to my diet. What is the worst spices in which I'm using? The gravies. When I try to make spices into a gravy, right, that is more dangerous. But if I use spices whole in my cooking, or powder it, freshly powder it, that is much better, has a better antioxidant. But if I fry the spices, make into a gravy, then add it in the food, that is the worst way that my gut can bear. So spices are very rich source of antioxidants, polyphenols, and phytonutrients, but they should be used in very small amounts because they're very high sources of antioxidants. And more spices will hurt your gut.
Correct. So there is a sweet spot, right? Spices play an important role. They're healthy, but like many other things, let's not overdo it. And definitely let's not make it into a gravy and fry it. Use it whole or powder it.
Perfect.
Right. Perfect. One of the things that most of us sort of have issues with is not the meals themselves, okay, but it's the snacking that happens between meals. That's where, all the discipline we try to maintain during the meal all goes for a toss. Are there snacky versions of the Indian Mediterranean diet?
Very much. As I said, nuts and seeds, you need 30 grams of nuts and 2 tablespoons of seeds. You can make a laddu, you can make a bar, you can eat it just like that, but they should be not roasted. If you soak it, it is better. They should not be salted, roasted, because then you lose the omega-3. Because omega-3 fats are very easily oxidized, especially these PUFA oils, PUFA fats, which we are looking at. So that's where the 30 grams of nuts and 2 tablespoons of seeds, you can use it in any form as a wonderful snack, which you can really look at it. You can have a yogurt, as you rightly said, that you have low-fat Greek version of yogurt. Yogurt with nuts or fruit is another good combination which can be used for snacks. Indians have a lot of makhana here. Makhana is your lotus stem seed. It's a seed, which is it's a very crisp, crunchy snack and better than popcorn from nutrition point of view because it is a seed. So a seed and a nut is not a carb. So definitely they won't spike your insulin and all. So I think that makhana is also a good idea to have a snack. You can combine your vegetables and with some protein like soya chunks or the lentils and make a cutlet out of it and saute it in that snack, a fresh snack. So I think all these are typical snacks which you can add it. Seeds are good snacks, nuts are good snacks, which you can not look at spiking. Low fat dairy, they don't have lactose, they don't have high fat. So that's a very good snack. More than eating khakras, and khakras is dried chapati. So it's a gluten, it has a high calorie, it spikes your sugar. So that's not a very, biscuits, khakras are not a good snack. Seeds and nuts and combination of vegetable and proteins, like I said, cutlets, or you can have a burrito bowl. That's a very good snack. Popcorn is a very dangerous snack because it's a corn, which is a carbohydrate, salted corn, and you can eat a lot of popcorn. And if you're putting that in a very high temperature with a fat, now we've just talked about fat, which is cooked at a very high temperature, it's more dangerous. So this is how I think you can look at the snacks from healthy point of view and suiting in Mediterranean style.
Yeah, yeah. Geeta, I know the Indian adaptation of the Mediterranean diet is relatively new. And you, I think, quoted a study at the beginning by Dr. Mohan, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
where that has been studied.
Yes.
Obviously, not as much as the
Western
Mediterranean diet itself, but the Indian version. And I would bet that that's only going to increase. More and more studies are going to come out of this.
True.
Based on whatever we have seen so far, it sounds like it's beginning to show, and maybe there's some fine tuning is needed as to exactly what the Indian version is. Like,
Okay.
I hope one day we can have our own pyramid of the Indian version of the Mediterranean diet, and maybe that's something we'll put out, our version, right?
Yes.
But it sounds like value-wise, it does. I mean, should do all the same sorts of things because the principles are the same, right? In terms of how it should impact your cholesterol, your glycemic
Cash flow.
control, and all of that.
True. Very
Good.
true.
Are there any places or situations where this should be avoided, where the Mediterranean diet or the Indian version of the Mediterranean diet should not be recommended?
Mostly in irritable gut issues like irritable bowel syndrome, because we are focusing on a lot of vegetables here. And vegetables in Mediterranean diet are mostly raw, unprocessed. But in India, we try to cook vegetables or either chop it finely. We call it as kuchumber or koshimbir. Chop it finely, blend it, make it a raita. So vegetables in an Indian cooking are mostly well cooked or finely chopped. It's easy for my gut to adapt it. But if I use a lot of salads in a bowl of salad or some kind of vegetables which are unprocessed, leafy vegetables, we have something called as nightshade vegetables. They are all seeded vegetables, like brinjal is one of them, tomatoes, palak, the leafy vegetable. They are very hard on gut. So with the concept of looking at Mediterranean diet, if I overeat my vegetables, which is a half portion which we've been discussing, that becomes more dangerous for my gut because it will give you bloating, it will give me constipation, it will give me gases, it may give me irritable bowel syndrome. So that, I think, one area where I need to be very careful. That's why I always say adaptation of Mediterranean diet and Indian diet is eat vegetables which are cooked, finely chopped and tempered. So when you add oil to the vegetables as a salad oil or as tadka oil in vegetables, they're much better tolerated because gastric emptying is delayed. If you eat fat with your food stays in your stomach for longer period of time. So you get time to digest, assimilate and all that. And that is why I think this is an area where we should be more careful about in converting this into a Mediterranean diet.
So healthy people usually will not have issues, but if you have IBS already, irritable bowel syndrome, then definitely adapt carefully and use this carefully.
Absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. So if you want to start tomorrow, if you have to give, let's say, 3 quick things, I mean, you've given a lot and there's a lot of really valuable information, but what are the 3 quick things someone can do to start integrating this into their diet?
Perfect. So we just spoke about unprocessed food and eat food which is very naturally cooked. So we always say that avoid high fat, sugar and salt. In India, we have started a Eat Right movement by government, and they talk about Eat Right movement saying HFSS. They've coded it as HFSS. That means added sugars, added fats, and added salt. These 3 things which comes in more processed and packed, which it becomes our breakfast cereal many a times because they have a lot of fructose corn starch sugar, or it just comes as a handy meal, a Frankie or anything. All that to be avoided. HFSS is a very beautiful code word. High fat, sugar, salt added, which comes from outside, from packed. So that's something which we can start looking the starters, or when we order all that, it has added fat, which is more dangerous, which we need to highlight. We need to understand that my colors in the diet has to be improved. So if you just visually think about that eat well plate, oh, that eat well plate has amount 3/4 of the plate of the half as vegetables and little fruit also. So if I can add a small amount of fruit in my food, it will improve the absorption of my nutrition also. Like the better, like if I have a small half guava with my food, the bioavailability of the food becomes very, very good. So more colors in my diet, half of my plate looks colorful. That makes it interesting. And as I said, I insist that your oils should be not exposed to high temperature and to the maximum air. So store your oil in cool and dark place. So I repeat, HFSS, high fat, added sugar, salt. Your oil should be stored in cool and dark, and stop exposing your oil to high temperatures as much as possible. And more the colors, half of my plate, better it is.
Yeah. And, I want to sort of, tie a few of the different things together.
Sure.
If one follows the plate method that you described, right? 50% is vegetables and fruits. Within that, 75% is vegetables, 25% fruit.
True.
The whole grains is about a third, right? And
True.
the remaining 15-20% is protein.
Yes.
Right? If you follow this one concept, you will automatically see that your plate does get more colorful, because the vegetables add a lot of color, the fruit adds color, and so it'll also be colorful. So by having this balance that Geeta just spoke about, you'll also find that it looks a lot more colorful. And then, where possible, use unsaturated fat as your oil. And sometimes you have to use saturated fat as the oil. That's okay, but where possible, use unsaturated fat. You're going to get your 20% of saturated fat from your food in any case.
Absolutely.
Right? And avoid high temperatures and exposure to light, especially with unsaturated fats, right? The cold pressed ones.
True.
Right? So that would probably be the first few things, at least most of us can take away to integrate this. So maybe we move on to questions. We had a question that had been sent on the group in advance of this call, which is this diet a replacement or an upgrade to my pre-existing vegetarian approach?
No,
I'm new to this vegetarian diet approach and never explored it, because I never felt the need to. So, these two questions are sort of, I think, by the same person. So, what's your take on this, Geeta?
Yeah, I would like to say that this diet is neither an upgrade or revision. It is just rearranging the portions. We need to know how much to eat what. I think this is what is the basic concept which we spoke about in this, because the food is going to be the same, the cooking is going to be the same. It is just knowing that what quantity of vegetables, what quantity of lentils, I need to eat all that. So I think it's rearranging the portions is what is Mediterranean diet all about, and quantitative approach to your daily intake of food.
Perfect. I think, Gitanjali, you asked the question, so hopefully that answered yours. Is this helpful during menopause, both with typical symptoms, but also food that naturally help balance hormones?
Yep, menopause, I think it's a very interesting way of looking. Mediterranean diet is definitely a healthy diet. But step one in menopause is, I think, the fat in your body triggers a lot of complaints. So if you start looking at a good body composition when you're in 40s and when you want to enter 50, that takes care of most of your problems. So step one is, in perimenopause, start looking at fat loss, because fat is the culprit for a lot of menopausal symptoms, because each one of us have a different way of looking at menopause. It is not a standardized menopause complaint which each one of us have. Two, my estrogen is going down. So I need to replace it with phytoestrogens in my diet. Now, phytoestrogens is definitely vegetable, is from Mediterranean diet we pick up, but soy, natural isoflavones. I can use soy in different form. Bean is not a very good form, because bean is very unprocessed, soya bean, because it has a lot of anti-nutrients. But if I process my soya bean into tofu, tempeh, or chunks, the nuggets, or soya milk, the sugar-free soya milk, I think it's a better way of looking at bioavailable isoflavones in soya beans. So every menopausal woman, thyroid, no thyroid, doesn't matter, one portion of soya is absolutely going to create a good balance of phytoestrogens in you. Flaxseed is another supported phytoestrogen or omega-3 rich food here. Seeds, 2 tablespoons of seeds, mix of seeds. In that, add little more flax seeds. That supports the balance of your phytoestrogens. And vegetables and fruits, definitely, yes. Next nutrient which I'm looking in menopause is vitamin D and calcium. Do not ignore this, because your bones go low, your vitamin D absorption lowers down, you don't realize what is happening with you, your strength is decreasing, your muscle loss is happening. So I think somewhere you start looking at calcium D protein as a very integral part of your menopausal therapy as you take it. And the third is the omega-3. You have to balance your omega-3. Take supplements if you cannot manage with your diet, but omega-6, omega-3 balance will create a lot of anti-inflammatory support to your hormonal balance.
Yeah. And, again, there's a lot of very valuable information in what Geeta just mentioned. One thing that you must have noticed for everybody on the call is last week after the call, based on input from one of you, we actually created not just the long form video and short clips from the video, but we also created a document, which is a quick short summary of all the key points discussed. And we'll do the same thing even with today's, because there is so much valuable information that we don't want it to get lost. So it'll probably be a 2-pager, and you can get all the key points in it through this document. So just wanted to sort of mention that. And the other thing, I just want to clarify one point that Geeta made. Geeta, you spoke about fat being a big driver of issues. And I want to just make sure everyone is clear that fat you were referring to is the body composition fat, not your dietary fat, right? Because can be two different things.
Right.
And so for those of you who have not done this before, it's worth looking into. I write about it, I do it myself, and we highly recommend it, is to use a body composition analysis scale, because weight by itself is not a very good metric. If you have nothing else, sure, it's a good first order measure, but it's not a great metric, because what we have to really look out for is what is the balance of muscle mass in our body, visceral fat versus subcutaneous fat, and they all play very different roles. They all contribute to weight, but different configurations of visceral fat and muscle mass for the same weight can paint two very different pictures of health. And so, you get a $25 scale on Amazon that can do that. It's not super accurate, but it's a good sort of trending way. If you get access to a DEXA scan or an in-body scan, those are more accurate, but you can't do that very often. But if you are only measuring weight, I would highly recommend, given Geeta's comment that our body composition, our fat does trigger or mess up with our hormones, making sure that you're looking at your fat composition and your muscle mass composition is absolutely worthwhile. We'll have a whole talk just on that, but because Geeta mentioned it, I just wanted to clarify that.
Absolutely.
Yep. The next question, is the Mediterranean diet totally different from ancient Indian yogic and Ayurvedic diet?
Yeah, Ayurvedic diet and yogic diet has a lot of raw. I don't know what ancient Ayurvedic diet means. Some Ayurvedic diets are a lot of talking about the vegetables. There are a lot of do's and don'ts there. Like I said, nightshade vegetables, cooking practices are different. But I think what is different in this is, in ancient diet, if it is a lot of raw vegetables, we start looking at balancing the raw and cooked vegetables here. Asian diet is good because they're very much minimal processed food there, yogic diet, because they don't recommend a lot of cooked and processed food. So in that point of view, very much similar to Mediterranean diet. Yogic diet uses nuts in a lot of concept. That's very good. They don't allow the fat to heat at a longer temperature. That is a good part. So it's almost similar. The Asian diet and the Mediterranean diet is almost similar, except for the vegetable part, which we say in Mediterranean diet, you can eat all the vegetables, see to it that you balance the cooking part of vegetable which you're looking at. So I think it's almost the same.
Perfect. Shashi asked, supplementation through omega-3 fish oil supplements is also recommended. Yes, it was a question, and absolutely. If you're not getting it from your food, definitely use it. Saili had a question, is coconut oil a good choice for Indian cooking? I think you answered that, but maybe you can just
coconut oil is saturated fat. I think you cannot replace your cooking oil with saturated fat. You can always, if you are a South Indian or you're used to it, you can start looking at one dish in coconut oil and all that, but do not replace your oil with coconut oil because it's a saturated fat.
Perfect. One of our past guests, Dr. Renu Joshi, she has provided a nice reference to Dr. Ambuj Roy's work at AIMS
Yes,
on
yes.
MAD, the Indian Mediterranean diet, and she's even put a link. So, Renu, thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
We'll publish that link also in our notes. Is there specific salt that is good for health? Iodized salt, rock salt, etc.
Okay, salt actually, WHO says 5 grams per day, not more than that. So it's a 1 teaspoon salt alone. That's the primary goal we should look at. Variety of salts, end of the day, my body needs iodine at the same time. I promote iodized salt because I think iodine is equally important for my body, which I may or may not get from soil and water, because iodine is in a very small amount. That's why fortification of iodine was a part of this movement where my body needs some amount of iodine. Thyroid function depends on iodine and etc. So I look at iodized salt as an integral part of my salt intake. Rest of the salt, I think we need to look again, refined salt, non-refined salt. You can keep debating it for a long period of time, but let's upgrade the iodine in our diet, which is absent if I don't eat it through the salt, which is fortified.
Perfect. Is paneer safe to eat? I'm assuming the answer to that is absolutely.
Yes or no?
Yes. Is paneer safe to eat?
Paneer has a lot of saturated fat because dairy. 100 gram paneer. Tell me, Nikhil, how much milk or you can use to make 100 gram of paneer?
Probably 5 to 10 times that.
500 ml. Yeah, 500 ml milk is equal to 100 gram of paneer. Now, 500 ml, if you buy paneer from outside, is from whole milk. Make it home skim milk. So even if you make from skim milk, it is whole milk 7% fat. So 500 ml of milk will give me 35 grams of fat.
Of saturated fat.
Saturated fat. And protein, it will give me 18 grams. So if I'm eating paneer, I'm eating more fat than protein. So I don't look paneer as a very great source of protein and fat because I'm contributing to good amount of saturated fat there. And plus so much of protein, 18 grams, but comes with higher fat content. Rather, I look at 2 bowls of curd, which is more safe, gut friendly, and easy to digest. So 2 bowls of curd gives me good amount of calcium, which takes care of. So paneer occasionally, not more, because though protein is high, fat is even more higher if I use a whole milk.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that's a key point. It's nothing is ever off limits, right? Like paneer is fine, just it's not too often is the takeaway message.
Perfect.
Eating ghee with every meal, is that a good thumb rule to know how much is okay in a day?
Sorry, can you repeat? Is eating?
Is there a good thumb rule to know how much ghee every day is okay?
So I spoke 5 to 10 grams, not more than that every day. That's very important. Again, it all depends on how much dairy you're using. Your tea, coffee, curd, buttermilk, paneer, everything you start looking at it. If you're adequately consuming dairy, do not eat a lot of ghee. Because end of the day, we have to calculate the saturated fat. You can't overboard it. And plus, if you're a non-vegetarian, you look the saturated from that point of view also. So a small teaspoon, 5 grams of ghee should be more than enough.
Yeah. Groundnut oil, any other comments? I know you already mentioned it once.
Yeah, you use it in rotation with soya and rice bran oil. Don't use groundnut oil alone.
Avocado chutney, is it good in thali?
Yeah, because avocado is good source of mufa, we discussed. So definitely, we still Indians are not adapted to the taste, but gradually we are also getting over it. But finally, it's a good fat for us.
Great. I think that's we're just about out of time and we're just about out of questions. So this was excellent, Geeta. Not surprising because your breadth of knowledge is so wide. We could have 2-3 sessions just on this topic. But thank you so much again, Geeta, for doing this. And we will hope to see you again. We'll invite you back whenever you're ready for it.
Happy to be here with you, Nikhil. Thank you very much again for inviting and moderating. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you to all the audience for such an interactive discussion on the chat. And definitely your interest says a lot of things here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.